Hi, Denise Matteau here for the Visions of Mercy channel. Um, is John S. Captain really nuts? That's the title of this video. Who is John S. Captain? John Captain is a man whose life was suddenly turned topsy-turvy when a woman he loved was shot in the head. This affected him deeply. He is now convinced that this woman, Tiffany Jenks, was a Monarch Slave of the MKULTRA program. He's been on some extremely popular and wide-reaching radio programs. Clyde Lewis has spoken to him. He's been interviewed by Richie Allen. I'll throw some links to these major radio programs, and Ed Opperman of the Opperman Report. These are all people who take conspiracy theories pretty seriously. And there's a channel, I won't give out the full name because it disguises who's running it, but the person who's got this channel up to tell the truth about what happened to John Captain's girlfriend, Tiffany Jenks, is actually run by one of the suspects in the murder. Somebody who was actually caught on videotape and is seen on videotape and has not denied being the person in the videotape walking with the convicted killer before Miss Jenks was killed. John Captain has published that videotape. I've seen it. The link is in the description. There's a man who had given shelter to Tiffany Jenks before she died. He appeared on the Opperman Report. His name is Richard Lovett. Ed Opperman interviewed him. It was a hard interview to follow. The man's a lawyer. He says he's a lawyer. I don't know if he's a practicing lawyer. He might be retired. He's in his 60s. He's about my age. Very hard to follow. He's very evasive in his speaking style, and it's hard to tell if this is just the way he talks or if he was, in fact, feeling evasive about the questions Opperman was asking. Opperman seems to have come to the conclusion that John Captain is not quite right in the head. Frankly, who would be right in the head if someone you loved was telling you over a long period of time that she believed she was going to be killed somehow? She would say different things. She was going to die. People were after her. At one point, she said people were after him and her together, and she said it had something to do with her job. Then it happens. And not only do you find out that your dear friend was predicting her own demise, but you automatically have faith in the government. And all of a sudden, the government, the police, the investigators, the prosecution, the judges, they all behave like you're the enemy. But they don't behave like you're the enemy because they think you had something to do with it. They just want you gone. They want the case closed. And you go through the hell of handling your grief and this fight against inexplicable corruption. Because frankly, if you're the kind of person who already believes the government is corrupt, you're not going to be thrown off balance when something like this happens. But if you're living the life of a good American, minding your own business, just moving along, voting on election day, believing everyone does their job, believing people are honest, believing the police are there to protect you, and that is shattered by a bullet to the head of the woman you love, it's a nightmare. Has John Captain been driven over the edge? Because now he's all focused on MKUltra. And who put him on to MKUltra? Nobody would listen to him. Nobody would listen to a word he said. Nobody would look at his tapes. Nobody would listen to the video. Nobody would listen to the recordings or look at the videos. And it happens that he lives in the same city as Clyde Lewis, a very famous, conspiracy-oriented radio personality. The two of them eat at the same cafe regularly. They bump into each other. He sees an opportunity to introduce himself to Mr. Lewis and hands Mr. Lewis some of the recordings. Lewis doesn't even know who he is. He has read about the murder of Tiffany Jenks, who was a very famous case, but he doesn't connect this guy in the cafe with the headlines in the newspapers until after they're deep in conversation, because he is amazed at what he hears. He plugs immediately into a satanic element in Tiffany Jenks's conversations that John Captain, having nothing to do with the occult or any of that crazy stuff, didn't even recognize, but Lewis recognized it. Now Lewis is interested. Finally, John Captain has somebody paying attention. And finally, people start looking at what he has to offer. He finds a way out. And God bless Clyde Lewis. So, the story's getting out. They can't escape it. So one of the people in the videotapes, one of the friends of the convicted killer, opens a channel to start calling John S. Captain crazy. I actually had my stomach turned when I said, okay, in all fairness, I know nothing about this guy. I'm going to go to this channel that supposedly has the truth. I had no idea that the person running the channel was the same person he was talking about in the videotape. There's so much produced, there's so much evidence that it's overwhelming. It'll take you a week to go through it all. So I go to the channel, and the first video they have up that I click on is these two females laughing about the murder. It's called something about rolling the eyes. And they're laughing about the murder. They sound like a couple of meth-headed ghouls. It was horrific. I said, I don't know who this is, but my God. That's as bad as the channels that were put up about my daughter. When she died, she was killed. She was killed in 2010. And there were people putting up channels. One of the killers, nobody was convicted in her case, okay? One of the people I suspect was involved actually began putting up channels within days of her death, using her name and mockery and sending me links. The same thing that they're doing to John Captain. Those channels were taken down. But this one, I'm flabbergasted. And I think, okay, these are horrible people. So I listened to the Opperman Report. Links in the description. The Opperman Report, in which John Lovett, the lawyer who had in fact allowed Tiffany Jenks to stay in a room at his home because he's a man in his 60s who is a Presbyterian, good Christian, and she was a prominent young lady who was obviously on the skids with alcohol. She'd lost her job, which was a career, professional, highly skilled, very important job in the electric power grid at the overseeing some dams in the BPA Power Authority. She had an important, sensitive, and very interesting job. Very interesting when you look at MKULTRA. Lovett gives the poor woman a place to stay and encourages her to clean up, tries to get her to go to church. She uses his place a little bit as a flop house. She gets involved with John Captain, who's just a regular guy. The 60-year-old Presbyterian, 60-something-old Presbyterian doesn't like that. And eventually, Tiffany Jenks goes the way of most alcoholics. She rides through the people willing to help her. Even John Captain finally gives up when he finds her stashing bottles and says, I can't help you. And then very shortly after that, he gets the news that she's been found with a bullet in the head. The emotions that overwhelm him, because he was in tears over not being able to help his alcoholic sweetheart. And how many people in love with alcoholics understand the terror that grips your heart when you finally tell them, I'm sorry, but I can't help you, you have to leave. And then you don't know what's going to happen to them. You don't know when you're going to get that phone call. And he got that phone call. And the rest becomes an even worse nightmare. But he holds to sanity. And he has faith. He's not a church-going man. The church-going man is the evasive Mr. Lovett. Opperman doesn't like conspiracy theories, and he doesn't like emotions. And John as Captain is an emotional man. You got to stand back and cut through. You got to recognize what he's going through. Would I be calmer in his shoes? Would you be calmer in his shoes? So you pick through, and the fact that he's providing raw evidence, you can listen to it yourself and you can say, oh, I think he's exaggerating on this point, but there's no denying this other point, and there's no denying that, and there's no denying that. And he's entitled to exaggerate a little bit when he's he's grabbing people by the shirt collars and saying, listen to me, listen to me. You got to forgive him for that. Now, Lovett, okay, so he's an older man who, he's a little angry that his charity effort didn't work out so well. And he says, we all just have to accept the fact that we'll never know what happened. We have to accept that fact. But Mr. Lovett maintains a friendly relationship with the woman who was in the video walking past John Captain's store, which had video security, before Tiffany Jenks was shot in the head. This woman is seen in that videotape walking past his store with the man who was convicted of shooting Tiffany Jenks in the head later that week. They were they were stalking, as far as John as Captain was concerned, they were stalking her, and he didn't know it. He didn't know what was going on. Those people walked by the store. Well, people walk by stores every day. You don't know what's going on until after you're looking and you recognize them. Why is John Lovett friendly with that person? Is John Captain really nuts? Go to his channel and figure it out for yourself. Denise Matteau, Visions of Mercy, over and out.